Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatosh Maham Om Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome to our Q&A. So the few of us here. So what is your first question, Claudio? Since you...
Yes, I have two questions about the mind, because it's always hard to... Can you hear me good? Yeah.
Yeah. Two questions about what?
The mind. The mind, because it's always a little bit hard to understand Manomaya Kosha and Vijnana Maya Kosha. First of all, in Vedanta, what is the mind in Vedanta, from the point of view of Vedanta? Because in the spiritual world, the spiritual market, the mind is always seen like the mental body. The mental body, it seems like there is an energy around us where there are thoughts flowing here and there, and this is the mental body. But in Vedanta, it seems totally different, something totally different. But not totally, but how we can say in a simple way what is the mind in Vedanta? Because I have understand that it is the subtle body, no? The mind is have a lot of function, and it pervades all the body. There is the mind, because you also feeling sensations. It's always the mind that receive, that sees, that how we can say that feel the sensation, we can say. So he has the function of feeling, he has the function of intellect, and all these things. So in a simple way, how can you explain me what is the mind in Vedanta? It is the subtle body or something else?
For the beginners, we say that the subtle body is the mind. So this is the simple explanation. Okay, we have three bodies: the physical body, and then we have the subtle body, which is the mental, emotional, intellectual body, but it is present as the mind. Many times, especially in the initial expositions of Vedanta, Ramji presents the subtle body as the mind, okay? And then we have the subconscious mind, which is the causal body, okay? And then we have causal body, and then we have our we have the unconscious mind, the conscious mind, and the physical body. These are the three bodies of Vedanta. But when we start looking into the subtle body more attentively, going into more precise or more deep explanations or understandings about this subtle body, and then we begin negating those assertions or those teachings that were on the entry level. Vedanta is like that. We present tools, and then we start those, and then once we get prepared for a higher truth, so we present another truth, or we are present with another truth that is going to somehow contradict and negate the previous truth. But then the student have got the understanding already of the value of that intermediary truth, okay? Initial truth. Everything has its value. So, and then in the end of it all, so Vedanta presents the ultimate teaching, which is going to negate all previous teachings as well. You know, it's the truth is that nothing has ever really happened. You know, all of these are just concessions, you know, of ignorance so that you use a good ignorance to neutralize or remove the bad ignorance. We want a good ignorance, so that the bad ignorance causes suffering, the good ignorance cancels the bad ignorance and leaves the jiva free from the good and bad ignorance. That is the ultimate truth when we come to
Exactly.
Mandukya and so on. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. Then when we begin Vedanta, we say yes, you have three bodies, and then to make it simpler for people who come from the Western culture, we say that the causal body is equivalent to the unconscious mind or subconscious mind, and then the subtle body is the mind, okay, the mind, and the physical body is the physical body. And then slowly we're going to understand that the subtle body pervades the physical body, and then the subtle body is what keeps the physical body alive. And all of that makes sense because we know that somehow the soul, keeps coming back. There are so many different sources of esoteric science and mysticism and even very popular spiritual circles such as the ones in Brazil, which shows that the souls they exist sometimes incarnate and sometimes non-incarnate. And in Brazil, it's very common the phenomenon of these souls that takes somebody's body and speaks through them. It's a very popular phenomenon here in Brazil. So what I'm saying is that it's easy for us to understand that the mind is something that is not the physical body. Most people are still misled to conclude that the mind is thoughts only, and the thoughts occurs in the brain. So, and then they come to this mistaken conclusion that the mind is a byproduct of matter. Okay, so Vedanta begins from the get-go, from the very beginning, reverse the reversion. It start putting things in proper perspective, and then it says, no, the body comes out of the mind. The mind does not come out of the body. And then the thicker of truth gets really a little bit like, wow, this is outrageous. How can the body comes out of the mind if I have no power to create a body at will? You understand? I say, okay, now I want to heal my body. I want to become 30 years younger, the power of the mind and all of that. So we realize that although the mind creates the physical body, the mind does not create it alone. It creates in association with Ishvara. Ishvara is the one who knows how to construct this body-mind complex, give a physical material body to every mind. But we provide Ishvara what? Our vasanas, our desires and aversions, and then he say, okay, so you need another body. Okay, here it goes. I will do it for you according to your vasana. So it's easy for us to understand that the mind is there. And in the beginning, Vedanta presents the mind as a bundle of thoughts. But then in the next, just around the corner, it says, but it's not only about that, because these thoughts have emotions involved and has also a kind of a memory center in which you keep picking up the subtle memories from previous experience and using those files to determine how to respond to what's coming from the field of action. So, and then Vedanta begins presenting different functions of what's called the mind. And then once it starts dividing the mind by its different functions, and then it sometimes gets confused because it calls the emotional body, it calls it almost all the time mind. You understand? So the best way to avoid this confusion would be to avoid calling the emotional, the entry, the entry into our intellect, or the entry to the ego is the emotional aspect of our human experience, because every time we receive probably the karma or an input, okay, or a stimulus coming from the field, it comes and it produces a sensation, an emotion, a feeling, right? So this is the emotional aspect of the Jivatma. Yeah? So we call it mind, but if it helps you to understand it better, you can call it our emotional body. Some people come from different backgrounds, and it helps them to understand Vedanta if you attribute the mind to the emotional body, okay, as if it is a body on its own, okay? So, I mean, we can use words. I mean, the Eckhart Tolle went to the extent to say that there is even a pain body, which is a further subdivision of the functions of the subtle body. He says, oh, there is such a thing as a pain body, okay? Why? Because there are a lot of painful emotions, suppressed. You understand? So we have three bodies, and then in the subtle body, we have different functions, and one of them is the mind. So this mind it integrates the impressions come from the five sense, okay, that comes through the five instruments of perception, and then it comes through the five instruments of experience, which in one of those previous verse was presented as Jnana Hindriyas, which is instruments of knowledge, because the reception and the knowledge is part of one single organism. But for didactics, we subdivide it, okay? We say that the Paravdaka is coming, and then we receive it through this emotional center, let's say. It appears as what? It appears as an object, and the object is always attached to a thought about the object, okay? If you know immediately, say, oh, yes, I know, I have experienced that, and I have clear notions and ideas about how to deal with this object, whether I want it or not, or I'm going to try to control, change, or whatever. So every time appears an object, we have a thought, an idea, a notion about that object. It comes with a feeling, okay? So it comes through the object that appears as a thought, which is related to files we have in regards to previous contacts with that kind of object, if it's something totally new. And then we're going to immediately activate the intellect, and the intellect, which is the cognitive, the knowing faculty, is going to come and make a determination about that. Many times those determination needs to be revised again and again, as we know, okay? Because the tendency of the intellect is to determine somehow, to find a solution, to find to develop an idea about something. We know how, this is what we call projection. We see something, we don't really know much about that kind of situation. And it's so uncomfortable to be in that state of, yes, no, I'm totally ignorant about that. So the human jiva tend to just say, no, I know about that. And then it projects, okay? Because it is uncomfortable to be in that situation. I don't know. Lately, I mean, in my relationship with my wife and family, I say I don't know more than anything else, because it's the best answer. You understand? I don't know. I don't. Why I should know? I don't know. It takes care of all anxiety, So, but going back to this subtle body, which is often related or presented or referred as the mind, we could also call it the emotional body. So it somehow integrates the five sense perception, and then immediately it's going to sense it, it's going to feel it, okay? So it's said that it has different functions. One of them is the function of integrating the five sense perceptions, okay? And then the other one is immediate to question or to doubt, you know. It's to feel, integrates is to feel, it comes with an emotion, and then it's going to question a little bit. I say, yeah, and now what I'm gonna do that? And then, you know, immediately it submits to the intellect. So that there is another function associated to this emotional center that says the mind also emotes. What it means, the mind emotes. The mind not only submits, you know, this contact to the intellect asking for help, no, but it also provides the intellect with the emotion, with the energy, in other words, which is required for the intellect to process that experience and activate the response through the ego. Okay, the intellect and the ego, for example, is often present in some texts as the same center, because in the intellect we decide, we determine, and immediately the intellect says, okay, this is the course of action here. You know, this is the line of action I'm going to take. Okay, so as you can see, this is one single organism with different functions. So the mind is going to integrate, is going to feel it, is going to emote, it's going to question and be a little bit like that. And then the intellect kicks in immediately and determines, you know, with all this material that the mind presents, you know, that the emotional body presents. Yeah? So that's pretty much it. It's very simple. It's just a question of being watchful not to get too attached to the words and understand the concept. You understand? So, and then the mind has, in some other exposures of Vedanta, has another center, which is the memory center, which we can say, oh no, but the memory sense of vasanas, they're in the causal body. But we have a lot of memories that are conscious rather than unconscious. That we have a lot of memories subconscious. Most of our memories are somehow reduced into tiny bits of information, you know, in the causal body. It's subconscious. But we have a lot of memories available to us in the conscious mind. You understand? So we could say that it has also another center, which is where our conscious files of past experience, they are there available to us for consideration. You understand? So we have the mental, emotional, we have the thought, emotional center, and then we have the memory, and then we have the intellect, and then we have the thoughts, and then we have the ego. So this is all to facilitate our understanding of this mind. So as we progress with the study of Vedanta, we begin leaving behind this notion that the Jivatma, okay, is the subtle body. And we develop an understanding that the Jivatma is reflected consciousness, Chidabhasa, okay? So when Vidyaranya say, and it's just going to say over and over and over again through the Panchadasi, that the Jivatma is Chittabhasa, reflected consciousness. And when it says that it reflects on the micro medium, which is the micro mirror-like apparatus called the subtle body, and then there clearly we see the distinction between the Jivatma and the subtle body. So just to illustrate the fact that later on, we need to understand that the mind has, or this mind is equal to the subtle body, and it has several functions. And the Jivatma is not this subtle body. Jivatma is none of the three bodies, okay? The Jivatma is reflected consciousness. And because the Jivatma is reflected consciousness, it has the potential to understand its true nature, not at Chidabhasa. Chit at consciousness, Bhasa is reflection. So because the Jivatma at Chittabhasa, it has the power, potential to understand that its true nature is not Bhasa, it's Chit. You understand? Chit, Chit Abhasa, a reflection of consciousness. So if I am a reflection of consciousness, what is my true nature? Oh, it's Chit, it's not Bhasa. You understand? So if we were to say that, no, you are the subtle body, and then we would be totally identified with matter slash energy, which is in constant change. So now, in which way the Chittavasa needs to understand, to properly understand the relationship between the subtle body and its existence as Chittavasa. It needs to understand that a reflection is conditioned by the reflecting medium. Okay? So why it is important to understand the reflection, like a reflection in any mirror, is conditioned, it's a byproduct of the original light and the qualities of a mirror. It's a byproduct of original consciousness and the reflecting medium. You understand? Which is going to produce what? Reflected consciousness. So, and then we need to understand the subtle body only for the sake of really understanding how important it is for us, this process of purification of the subtle body, the physical body, of the five, of the body-mind complex. You see, when we say body-mind construct, body-mind complex, we are talking about these two bodies, the subtle body and the physical body. Okay? So the body-mind construct is the subtle body, permeating, pervading the physical body, making the physical body dance and react and respond and determine. Okay? So this subtle body pervading makes what we call Jivatma, okay? The agent, the experience knowing entity. So we have this body-mind complex, which is the subtle body plus the physical body. Yeah? So now, why it's so important, the process of purification of this body-mind complex? Okay, why? Which begins with an analysis of values and lifestyle to begin with. Okay, why it's so important? Because we need to have a good reflecting medium so that I can experience myself as reflected consciousness in a pure, clear, reflective manner. You understand? Otherwise, I'm going to be a lousy Jivatma. Oh, but it's still the nature of the lousy Jivatma is Atma, is consciousness. You understand? Yes, but such a reflection, due to the low quality of the reflector, such a reflection will never understand that its nature is free, limitless awareness, consciousness, original consciousness. We'll never understand. Why? Because the body-mind complex needs to be purified, refined. You understand? So how important it is to take care of our body-mind complex? It is fundamentally important, okay? Although I am not the reflecting medium, I'm not the reflector. I am the reflected consciousness. It's not that Vedanta is fascinated with indefinite purification or refinement of the reflecting medium. No, we need to do some work on that level only to the extent that we develop a sattvic contemplative mind, consciousness, reflect consciousness. okay, that allows us to understand the teachings of the Upanishads. Once this is understood, what happens? The the Jivatma that is no longer seeking to know its true nature, it does not really care for purification. But there is no purifier greater than self-recognition, self-knowledge. Once you recognize your true nature, so this Jivatma, which is reflect consciousness, becomes more sattvic, more clear, more contemplative, okay, more balanced, okay, more wise, and so on. Now it's a byproduct. It's a bonus, as I often say. But then, but this is important to understand because self-knowledge, self-recognition is not 100% purification or refinement. Self-knowledge is a knowledge that requires a certain degree of preparation, purification, refinement. You understand? And then later on, this process of purification can become part of one's life, but more like a hobby, okay? More like why
Yeah.
not to be a pure, a more pure, a better example of Dharma, of love, of compassion, of wisdom. Why not to improve on this jiva? But, this process is no longer a tough discipline. It's just a question of one's keeping association with the scripture and remain, integral, honest with oneself. Okay. Understand that the limitations of the jiva, the impurities of the jivas, do not really affect one's true nature. It's just what it is, and I would prefer that I don't have this and that reaction, that I don't have these moments in which, I act as if I have forgotten my true nature. You understand? So this, if the person is not in denial, the person says, okay, this is not my fundamental, higher, primary nature, but I can see that it could use some purification, but without any anxiety because the identity has shifted already. You understand? It's just for the sake of supporting Dharma. You understand? And serving as a good example in the sense that what one teaches is what one lives. One's lives and one's words and deeds should be aligned so that these revelations they can produce trust, trust, confidence in the students and so on. What is your next question, Claudio?
Why the mind has this function of doubting, this doubt function, even if you explain very good now, so maybe I understand, but why the mind, first of all, is doubting? Like you say now, you say, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Maybe it's not totally clear for me. I understand the intellect, it decides,
Yeah.
but the doubting function is a little bit vague for me.
Well, I mean, it's everybody's born out of ignorance. We have this reflection of consciousness is not a pure reflection, like in the case of Ishvara. Ishvara is Sattva Pradhana Prakriti. It's a reflection of consciousness in Sattva Guna, basically. You understand? And then Ishvara is therefore all-knowing. It knows everything. It's pure knowledge. Okay. So it's a living creature, a living being, a living entity made out of pure sattva, pure intelligence and knowledge. That's why it can manage the entire universe and sustain it and recycle it with its laws and so on. Okay. So we on the other hand, we depend on this micro reflector. Ishvara depends on the macro reflector, and there is enough room in this macro reflector in which there is an ocean of sattva in which Ishvara appears. But in our case, we have a very small reflector. And in this reflector, we have sattva, sattva guna, sattva guna as the substratum. But with the addition, with the inclusion of rajas and tamas that mix up over the background, over the substratum of sattva. So now we have this medium, but it's covered by rajas and tamas. Okay, so now we come here and we don't know much of anything. First of all, we come here right under the pressure of our private personal ignorance, from previous births. So it is the subtle body.
You're breaking up a bunch, Arlindo. Dear.
Okay, let me see here.
Arlindo,
Yeah,
we can't hear you.
can you hear me now?
Yes, maybe
No.
you can better your connection, or
I'm
change
going
it.
to change to the other.
Okay.
Okay, let's try this one. So what I was saying, that's the problem now.
Yeah, it was one. We lost 1 minute or
Yeah.
30 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. I don't remember.
I know we were talking about the mind and why it doubts, and then I was saying that the
Yeah, it doubts
individual soul.
because the sattva get mixed with rajas in our reflected medium. Sattva, rajas, and tamas get mixed. So
Yeah.
we doubt. I think we were saying about that.
Well, basically, why we doubt? That's the point here. So the subtle body has enormous influence of rajas and tamas as it makes the reflection. And why we doubt? We doubt because we don't really know exactly what's going on. I mean, every moment in our lives, we have to reflect, we have to consider. You understand? We need to question the contact, as sometimes I say. So now what? So in any circumstance, why? Because we have rajas and tamas. Tamas is the fundamental energy that somehow makes the intellect dull. You understand? We can't really understand what's going on. And then immediately we have rajas that, in order to try to solve the problem, project something. Okay. So we have these two energies, and then we have the sattva there, which produce the intellect. It's there with the emotional aspect of a subtle body as well, but because mithya is not what it seems to be, because to begin with, mithya, samsara, seems to be real. The object seems to be real. And then avidya or maya reverts, the relationship between the subject and the object. You understand? So all these inversions, you understand? And all these projections of values, of reality in the object and so on, makes life for us difficult, because we think that reality is duality. We think that duality is just physical reality. Reality is this duality, I, the subject, and the subtle world and the material world, and we believe that this subtle material world of objects of experience are not only real, but they were designed to complete me. Okay, so everything is somehow our natural vasanas, our tendencies to read, to make a reading of this universe, is already deceiving us, is misleading us, okay? So we don't know. And everybody, when it comes here, we start being programmed by our local culture, you know? But something inside of us is always questioning. Some children have this personality at early age that they keep asking, but why? And then you give an answer and say, but why this? And why that? They are not really satisfied, you understand? They have a, you know, an inquiry kind of mind, okay? So it's this doubting mind is something that works on our favor. If we wouldn't have this suspiciousness, you know, and this tendency to reflect, question, inquiry, you know, we would never come out of samsara, because we would be totally conditioned by ignorance, by avidya. We would never have any possibility. It is our free will. So our free will, in the end, it comes down all the way to this ability to question life, question the status quo, question, you know, the values of society. Otherwise, we are just moving with the crowd and say, okay, the only thing about life is to get what you want, and the more the better. You understand? So we question that, and that is due to this questioning function of the Jivatma, you understand? Which comes with every contact. The worst possible thing is for us to be in a position that we believe that we know everything or most of everything. You know, there's people, oh no, I know, don't worry, I don't have any doubt or questions. I just moving life because I know. So it is a very sad condition, you understand? Because the wiser we become, the more we realize and accept the fact that we know very little. That's why we turn to the scripture knowledge, because it's pure knowledge revealed by the Lord Ishvara. You understand? We turn to that as a guide, you know. So now I need to guide my vision of the world, you know, using this revealed knowledge. Otherwise, I don't know anything. And then in the process, one develops Shraddha, which is confidence in this knowledge, Vedantic knowledge, as a source of pure knowledge. You know, it takes time to develop this confidence and this clarity, you know, and this conviction about these. You know, that's why it's so important to have a relationship with the scriptural knowledge, because it's the only source of pure knowledge, and with the scriptural teachers, because they don't have their own teaching, their own interpretation, you know. So because that is the only solid knowledge we have to base our decisions. After all, you know, we have to look, understand that we know very little, but only us, you know, these mini micro reflectors have the opportunity to understand that which the knowledge of the essential free nature of Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat. And this is called self-knowledge and freedom. You understand? To be free from Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat, free from that mistaken identification with these three principles, you know, of the universe. Can you hear my babies here? Anything more about the doubting function? Why we have this doubting function? It's so nature. We are born out of ignorance, and we come here and we don't know. Some people are going to take everything that mom and dad says, and some other souls a little more mature are going to question further and says, no, I'm not really conforming to all these notions I'm getting from mom, dad, and and the schools. So Ruth is saying it is a bird or dog. Yeah.
The chicken.
She's in a doubt. She's thinking that my chicken here is a bird or a dog. You see what the mind does? It questions and have doubts.
Arlindo, I was wondering, can you think, we have these senses that connect with the elements, and then we have the doubting function because of change. It seems to me that it's all just a beautiful setup, because Ishvara has provided us with everything we need to function. And the doubt just has to be there because it's a field of change. Like the eye has to be there to see form and color, and the ear has to be there for the air and the sound that travels through it. And in respect to the purification, I was wondering if, because I've begun to think of it in terms of an offering instead of something to produce something for the jiva, because the jiva is just a part of Ishvara. And if you go to Ishvara with that attitude of offering the jiva, you would of course want to purify it. It's like my mother used to make us always get dressed up to go to church. It's just a little bit of love being shown to the field.
Yeah, definitely. This Kama Yoga is the greatest and the most natural purifier. Huh? But you said something also very nice. It's good you remind us of that the mind doubts as well in connection to the question of Claudio, because we live in an order of reality which is called mithya, which not only is not real, it is apparently real, but it is in constant modification from one moment to another. Jagat is that which is always changing. And then let's say you go and you have an experience with something, and then you said like, okay, now I got it, and those was the results. I read it in a certain way and I acted, and those were the results. And then you say like, okay, now I'm gonna follow that script. And then you follow the script and it does not work the same way as before. Why? Because the field is in constant change. You understand? Everything is impacting everything, and therefore you have to be so wise to see this constant change, and adjusting our determinations, knowing that there is huge room for mistake, and not getting caught up in any sense of oh, I am guilty of having made a mistake. No, you understand? It's the nature of Jagat. There is a lot of room for mistakes. You understand? So we doubt as well because we are dealing with phenomenal objects that they are constantly changing, as Lynn has said. You understand? This complements that discussion. And and then Lynn was saying something also very, very appropriate to this discussion, which is that the best way to purify is not, I'm going to do this and this because I want to purify. She was saying, rather than doing something for my purification, I do something for the Dharma field, to Ishvara, represent as life, as the environment, as the Dharma field. And then I act more as a giver, a contributor, offering. than just extracting purification. I want purification. Give me this, give me that, because I want to purify. I want this and that spiritual, mystical experience because I heard that that's what's going to purify. Now she's presenting this process of purification, in the light of Karma Yoga, which is the understanding that our likes and dislikes need to be given away or sacrificed, with this spirit of doing what offers the best benefit to the total, to Ishvara, and with an attitude of devotion. It's like we say our emotions, because usually we are moved by getting what we want or avoiding what we don't want. We are moved all the time for these kinds of emotions which originate by our vasanas. Huh? So Lin will say, so why not to be moved rather than moved by likes and dislikes emotions for my own benefit, but to be moved by devotion, by dharma, by acting, not for the sake of extracting something for myself, in this case, purification or refinement, but acting to contribute, to give, you understand? To give back to the field something, knowing that what we give is very small, but if every one of us give with this spirit, we're going to create a better world, a better Dharma field, which is going to be more conducive to a stage on which Jiva can really grow spiritually. So that's very nicely reminded, Lynn. Yeah.
Another thing, Ramji talks about this big mirror of sattva that gets shattered and scattered. And then all these jivas with subtle bodies have that chitabhasa aspect. And I've been thinking lately that because I have been gifted an association with the Shastra and a guru and all that, it's a sort of a special responsibility to shine more brightly, because in effect, you've been asked to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a duty.
Yeah, I mean, once we have this knowledge, once we come to the Upanishads and we have this knowledge, if we turn our back to it, it is something similar to what is mentioned here and there in our text as committing spiritual suicide. Because if you are ignorant and you don't know that you are ignorant, and then you can be forgiven. But if you have known what ignorance is, and if you were given access to the knowledge that benefits not only the jiva but Ishvara as the Dharma field, and yet you say, no, I choose to be ignorant and to live an Adamic life. So this is a big karma, really big papa karma, because you cannot be forgiven anymore. We see it on this when they judge crimes and so on. If the person really did it deliberately, not really out of some ignorance that was somehow covering one's, conscious decision, yeah? And then it cannot be forgiven because it was really, the person was conscious and deliberately decided to act in a certain way like that. So yeah, it's we have a huge responsibility. It should not be taken as something heavy we carry around, but it is a responsibility because somehow we were exposed to this knowledge. And although ignorance is bliss, we know that it's a very lousy, poor quality bliss. So the best bliss comes from knowledge. So we don't want to go back and betray, and commit this spiritual suicidal. Yeah? Ruth, you are going to say something?
Going back to doubt, I'm thinking that it's related to the issue of free will, because you question for the purpose of clarifying your understanding, and then you make choices based on that knowledge. So, just a comment.
Absolutely, yeah, it's totally related to our free will, and I have mentioned a little bit about that. It's integral part of our free will to doubt before we choose. Free will is the power we have to determine and choose. So we doubt, otherwise we are just no longer exercise our free will. You know, if tomorrow human beings, for example, would mix up with artificial intelligence and no longer have a real free will, and then we would just respond mechanically. You understand? I mean, what is the free will of all other creatures, the insects and so on? They are said to be not to have a real free will because they respond without any choice. They just follow their program. You understand? So we have a free will, and it begins with questioning our experience. Otherwise, if we believe experience blindly, the experience that gives us pleasure, and we take this pleasurable experience to be the way to go, and then we are just destroying our lives spiritually, because and we see us as humanity doing so much harm to life on this planet because of this huge spiritual ignorance that this what they call Kali Yuga, and so on. Yeah. So we have another 5 minutes, 10 minutes at the most. If we have anything else to say, comment, contribute. We did not go into our big picture, but I think it was a good Q&A, further clarifying.
Yeah, Arlindo, I've been noticing that different teachers will define the mind differently depending upon what they're trying to get across. They know exactly what's going on. Like Shankara looks at the subtle body and with absolute correct knowledge about it, and then manipulates it for the teaching. Like sometimes he'll put the not the antahkarana, the ego in with the intellect, and sometimes it's separated out. Sometimes you don't talk about chitta at all. Sometimes it's in there. It's all pedagogical. It's for the teaching.
Yeah.
Whatever is useful for the student. So I always try to look at the context and understand that all those functions are there, but they're using these particular functions in this way to get at this particular point.
Yeah.
But it can be confusing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I somehow from the very beginning when Ramji suggests or invite me to write satsangs on Shine World, I always had this tendency to talk about deeper aspects of the teachings. You understand? And but it does not always work. In the beginning, I have certain experience when I was invited to give a talk in Brazil, and then they got all the friends from the world of yoga and meditation, and then I was present Vedanta on a level that went over their heads, and they never called me back. And some people, they got offended by my presentation. You understand? So I continue having this inclination to unfold the teachings on a deeper level, even if people come in contact with me in Portuguese language, they can see that my answers they they come from a deeper understanding, deeper level, and I enjoy doing that. Okay, but it does not help everybody if I start talking at the subtle body, and as a reflect consciousness, as a reflector medium, the jiva is not the subtle body. The jiva is reflect consciousness, and then if we go into panchadas, and then we're gonna go to some chapter that explains in which way jiva is reflect consciousness plus original consciousness, and then it's going to look into the chidabhasa, you know, different functions. As a Chidabhasa, we have original consciousness and reflect consciousness every moment in our lives, and original consciousness is having its own function, and the reflect consciousness has its own function. It's very detailed nuance about the distinction between the original consciousness that we experience and the reflected consciousness. Why they are mixed up? So I mean, if we talk about that without a proper background, and then it's of no help whatsoever, So if we keep our group alive, we will come to those chapters in which this conversation. I think it's the chapter 7 or 8 is the most profound, the most technical chapter Pancha does, you understand? With very fine discussions about all these nuance. So I enjoy it, and but I understand that it's not entry level conversation.
For me, I ask these questions because before Vedanta, it was really different. I had this idea of the mental body, so all these thoughts. And then with Vedanta, I see that even before Vedanta, I start to realize that the mind was not only thoughts, not only a bag with thoughts within. I was realizing that the mind was something like receptive, no? That it was something that the thoughts was like coming from outside. So it was more near to consciousness, no? So with Vedanta, this appears much more clear because the mind, at the beginning, at least, like you say very interesting thing when you say that at the beginning, you explain the mind in a certain way, and little by little, you go, no? Like you say, negating, and I don't remember. Okay, but so now it's at the beginning, we can say that the mind is like this. I see it more now like the sensor of a camera, like this, no? At the beginning, something that simply perceives, and then all the other functions. So it begins with awareness in a certain way, no?
Yeah.
It's like the awareness that is in the level of it's always awareness, but it's in a matter. It's like, no?
Yeah. I like that the term original consciousness. Okay, so it begins with original consciousness, limitless, unconditioned, uncolored by the three gunas and so on. And then Maya comes into play, and then all objects of the universe are created, among them the sentient objects called the jivas. And then the jivas experience, through the body-mind complex. They become an experiencing knowing entity. And the body-mind complex is developed from the 5 elements. Out of the 5 elements, the 5 sense organs and the 5 sense instruments are developed, you understand? On the subtle body. So it's all about that. And then it begins, you receive the input from the 5 instruments and sense organs of perception. and then the mind is going to do what it does. I mean, you have to start seeing the mind as something which is a very, very subtle matter, that it's so subtle that it pervades the physical body and enlivens, vivifies the physical body, through those 5 koshas, 5 levels, of identity, of personality, of human experience, the physical personality, and then energetic personality, and then the emotional personality, the intellectual personality, and the Anandamaya kosha, which is the most difficult subject matter to be explained and understood in Vedanta, So everything is a superimposition in awareness and consciousness, original consciousness. And then Maya produced these superimpositions, the names and forms, and then the universe, like, this Maya Prakriti explodes with all kinds of objects. And then, strangely enough, some of these objects also contains a different reflecting medium. So these micro reflecting mediums are going to produce this, what we call the body-mind complex. So the mind is very subtle body. It's a very, very subtle body. It's why it's subtle, because it has less rajas and less tamas and more sattva. That's why it produces a reflection. And it is this body which includes the pranas and the sense organs, the organs of knowledge. You understand? It is this, and even the organs of response, which are the organs that are going to activate and mold a response, So all of this is what we are in our mental level, you understand? And if try to begin to develop this picture that your subtle body, which is not really you, is what keeping this physical body alive, by the grace of the Lord Ishwara, of course. Ishwara is the one who knows, but it needs the subtle body. And then it is within this subtle body, this very fine, subtle body, you understand? It's like energy, it is matter. I mean, I love when here and there we say, the scriptures say that the subtle body is also matter, but it's a very subtle matter. So this subtle matter is going to do the job. And this subtle matter is in association with the physical body is going to produce this Jivatma reflection. And then the Jivatma reflection, which is subtler than the subtle body, it's subtler than the physical body, of course, is going to witness the subtle, the 3 bodies and the 5 koshas and everything, And then you need to develop that perspective of understanding, that I am the Jivatma, I am reflect consciousness, and I am constituted by a mixture of original consciousness and reflect consciousness, and I am the knower of the 3 bodies. You understand? I am the knower. I pervert the 3 bodies, okay? Because my true nature, is a mixture of reflect consciousness and original consciousness, So the world, the physical body, everything happens in you, in us as consciousness, you understand? And it happens within the mind as well, the mind produces, and the mind allows us to witness and experience the 3 bodies, and all experience that comes through these 3 bodies, or the 5 aspects of our human personality, the 5 koshas and so on. That's very nice discussion today. Nice questions, nice contributions and commentaries. And I guess I'd say thank you for you guys for showing up. I always love to talk. This is my sadhana as well. My sadhana is to talk about these topics, these liberating topics, presented by the these scriptures, and I'm always grateful. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, my friends. We meet again soon. Ishwara willing. Much love. Arrivederci. Ciao, ciao. And thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, my dear.